public hearing to consider the petition of Danvid Corporation and Properties 3D Incorporated as current property owners and Ron and Christine Sachs as contract purchasers for approval of the annexation of approximately 10 acres into the village of Gurnee. The annexation agreement contemplates the zoning of the property to R3 single-family residential and C2 PUD community commercial district as a planned unit development with preliminary PUD approval to allow the development of the site with the residential and commercial uses, including a special use permit for self-storage. Roll call, please.
O'Brien. Present. Wallace.
Present.
Thorstensen. Woodside.
Here.
Ross. Garner.
Here.
6 present.
So tonight, just to give you a flow of the way the meeting will go so that we can kind of set expectations, what will happen is that I will turn this over to the village administrator, Pat Mutes, to give just a brief summary. The village attorney will then speak a bit to the procedure that will follow tonight, and then the petitioner will be given an opportunity to present at that point. And then the floor will be opened for anybody that would like to speak for or against the petitioner and the petition that they're presenting. And once the floor is closed, the village board would then make a motion. This might seem a little unusual, but make a motion to approve the petition. That'll be the first motion you'll hear. And then there'll be a second, and then there'll be discussion. And based on that discussion, then the village board will vote. And then there'll be either a yes or no to approve that particular petition. And again, that's the reason for that is that the petition is being brought by the petitioner, so it's not that the village board is taking a position of either saying yes or no, or approving or not approving, but that's the way it sets up initially, so you understand why we're taking the votes the way we are. The other item is that for everybody to understand that we've had the opportunity to read emails from all parties. We've had an opportunity to see the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. The village board has a great reputation for being well prepared. So when you do speak, if you have a representative for your group, that would be helpful, or if you want to present something new, that would be helpful. But be mindful of the fact that we've had an opportunity to hear and read many of these things already. So, and it's been over a period of time. But nonetheless, you have a right to speak, and we'll give you the opportunity to do that. You'll note that at 7 o'clock is when our actual regular meeting starts. So this meeting will go from then, and if we need to go beyond 7 o'clock, this meeting will end. We'll start our village board meeting at that time, and then there's a spot in the village board meeting where this will be taken up again if we need to get to a final vote. So that's hopefully to set your expectations. And Mr. Mutes, if you'd like to provide a summary.
Sure. The petitioners, Ron and Christine Sachs, have filed several applications seeking in part approval of the development of approximately 10 acres generally located at the northwest corner of Cemetery Road and Washington Street to allow the development of a self-storage facility. To advance this request, the petitioners have made the following applications. 1, to have the property annexed and rezoned from E Estate in unincorporated Lake County to R3 Single Family Residence District and C2 PUD Community Business District as a planned unit development. 2, to have the planned unit development approved so that the subject property can be used for commercial uses. And 3, to have a special use permit issued, which would allow the self-storage facility. These zoning changes were considered at a public hearing conducted by the PZB on August 18th and received a unanimous unfavorable recommendation. Members of the public were in attendance that night and spoke against the proposal. Some of the concerns they expressed were lowering adjoining property values, stormwater and flooding, crime and safety, compatibility with residential uses, the aesthetics, lighting, noise, truck traffic, among other concerns. As the mayorhood stated, all the emails that have been sent to the village board regarding this proposal were included in your village board packet. Any emails that came in after the packet was sent out on Wednesday up until this afternoon were copied and placed at your spots tonight, so you have those emails as well. In your packet, you had a very detailed memo from our planning manager, Tracy Valcover, that covers the proposal. Staff will be available during the hearing to answer any questions that the village board may have. And then also included in your packet, the police department put together some crime statistics regarding other self-storage facilities in the village of Gurnee, so you have those as well. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Attorney Winter to talk about the procedural aspect.
And again, just to point out, Mr. Mutes just read, there were a number of petitions, but tonight, the board is only going to consider the annexation agreement. That's a rather extensive document, 14 pages. It's been on for public view. And basically, the petitioner is asking for this property to be annexed. But in addition to that, they want to have certain designated zoning decisions made for the property. And that's why it was necessary to have that previous public meeting, because they're asking for zoning changes. So I just wanted to explain that. It isn't just a case where annex and then we'll decide. No. The issue tonight is you'd have to be in, this board will have to make a decision whether they're in agreement with that, they approve the agreement that has been provided. With respect to that particular vote, I will point out for everyone's benefit that there is a state statute that talks about annexation agreements, and it requires a 2/3 of the corporate entities. So that means when the time comes, a vote, 5 affirmative votes would have to take place in order to approve the ordinance as presented, and so there should be some understanding of that. As the mayor alluded to, because the annexation agreement needs to have a public hearing, what typically happens, and will happen tonight, is the public hearing will be conducted, and at the end of it, one of the board members will make a motion. They will make it as an affirmative motion, because that's the request of the petitioner, and so we're all here tonight to see whether the petitioner's request is going to receive approval or not. And so that will first be a recommendation at the conclusion of the public hearing. However, the actual ordinance is an agenda item in the general meeting, and that's going to be the decisive vote on this particular issue, just so that you understand there's going to be 2 votes tonight. They happen to come in the same night, but it will be the second vote during the regular meeting. One other clarifying point is the public hearing is where both the applicant and the public can make comments. When we get to the regular meeting, after we close the public hearing, at that point, then it's really just a discussion, a motion and discussion from the board. So with that, I'd be prepared to swear in the witnesses, if it's appropriate.
Sir, if you wanted to start with the petitioner, or did you want to start with anybody?
Yeah, well, we generally will have the petitioners under oath as well. So at this point in time, we're first going to hear from the petitioners, but if you think at some point in time that you might come to a microphone, we're going to swear everyone in at the same time. Now, so if you think there's a likelihood that you might testify, I'd ask everyone to stand up at this point that's going to testify, including the petitioners. Raise your right hand. Now, I notice not everyone's standing up, so if you change your mind later on, you might have to point out to us that we didn't swear you in. But with that, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you. You may be seated, and the petitioner can proceed.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Callahan from the law firm of O'Donnell Callahan in Green Oaks, and we represent the petitioners. I'm not going to go through in detail the annexation agreement. That's what we're here for tonight. But I did want to point out a few of the terms of the annexation agreement and why they're there. You noted probably that because this is a PUD, you have the flexibility to approve deviations or departures or whatever you want to call it from the underlying requirements of your zoning ordinance. And I'd like to explain how they came to be. First of all, the commercial part of the property will be on the east side along Cemetery. The proposal is to zone that C2. That was a recommendation of village staff. They didn't want it to be C3. And C3, self-storage, is a permitted use. This is C2, not a permitted use, but you approve it through the PUD departure. So that's the reason why it's spelled out in that way. in the annexation agreement. Some of the uses that are otherwise allowed in the C2 zone are specifically excluded in the annexation agreement. So the annexation agreement provides that restaurants, reception facilities, hotels, and gas stations are not allowed, even though they otherwise would be. The annexation agreement provides for a 40-foot setback from the west boundary instead of 25, which is your code, so it's an enhanced setback. There are a couple of other minor ones that I'm not going to go into, but that's the PUD process, and that's how we are kind of fine-tuning this development pursuant to that process. One other thing I want to mention, I know there's been some questioning about the extension of I think it's called Churchill Lane from the subdivision to the west up into the residential portion of this property. That, again, was a recommendation of the village. So I think it makes sense from a planning perspective, but that's why that is on the plan. There was a negative recommendation of the Plan Commission, as mentioned. It was a bit surprising that it was unanimous and that it actually occurred at all. And the reason is, in February, the petitioner came before the Plan Commission in an informal presentation and received a lot of comments and modified the plans in order to address the comments that were received in February. So in August, it was recognized by some of the Plan Commissioners, notwithstanding that they recommended denial. For example, Member Poff said, developer did a good job trying to address some of the concerns of the PCB. Member Pesich said, these plans are a huge improvement. Happy with the progress. So my point in bringing that up is the petitioner has really tried to work with the village to change the plan to make it work, and we hope you agree that the modifications are favorable and that you would vote in favor of this. I'm going to just touch on a few of the issues that were raised before the PZB. And then I'm going to turn it over to John Swerk. We're going to take about 15 minutes. We don't want to take the entire 45 minutes. John's going to just go over the plan. He's the architect. And then Peter Nora is going to talk. He's the president of the Illinois Self-Storage Association to make a few comments. So here are some of the issues. Stormwater. The village has reviewed this stormwater plan. It has to meet the Watershed Development Ordinance of Lake County, which is a strict ordinance. Mr. Ziegler said at the Plan Commission PZB meeting that the rate of discharge of stormwater from the property will be slower than under the current conditions. So the stormwater situation should actually be improved over what it is today. Next was crime, and the police department of the village did a very nice job providing some statistics on a 7-year period for the 4 existing self-storage facilities in the village. They said there were 90 reportable crimes in the 7-year period, 2015 to 2021. That comes to about 3.2 per facility per year. But the interesting thing is that 40 of the 90, 44%, all happened in 2015, and 38 of the 40 were 2 incidents. So somebody broke into one of the facilities and cut 25 locks. So, you know, there were really, 90 may sound like a lot, but they were a limited number of events. So 55 of the total of the 90, 61% were 5 incidents. There were also some vehicle thefts in there. Those were U-Haul trucks that were rented and not returned. That's a vehicle theft. I think the good news is that I did not see any violent crimes in those statistics. So I think that's something to take into consideration. Ron Sachs also has a facility in Beach Park that it's a new facility. He's operated for over a year. He's had no calls there. He also contacted the Lake County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff's Department, for some of the facilities that are not in the village, I think in unincorporated Lake County, and they just they said it's really, there weren't any reports over a limited period of time. So I think that's helpful to consider. And the reason for that, I think, is self-storage facilities that are being built now have a lot of security features that the older ones didn't have. This one is going to have motion sensing cameras. Everything is going to be under video surveillance. The lights are have motion sensors. There's a security gate at the front, and which is one other feature that's important is there are actually people on site that patrol the facility, walk around and take a look to make sure everything's being operated correctly. Only Extra Space of the 4 existing facilities in the village has those types of features. The other 3 don't. And if you look at the crime statistics that your police department provided, Extra Space has the fewest number of crimes, which would make sense. So I think the notion that these are magnets for crime is just not true. I think if you're in an area that has high crime, there's probably higher crime rate at the self-storage facilities in those locations. But if you're at in Gurnee, which has a relatively low crime rate, I don't think you're going to find any kind of a problem with this type of facility. Another concern was, one other thing. One of the letters that was submitted talked about a sexual assault at a Zion facility recently. My understanding about that facility is it doesn't have cameras. It doesn't have people on site. It's a 24/7 operation. It's one of the older ones. So, you don't have the security features that you have at this location. Traffic. As Mr. Ziegler said at the Plan Commission hearing, there's very little traffic, about 30 vehicles a day. And although Cemetery Road is a county road, Lake County DOT said they didn't want a traffic study. There's not enough traffic from these facilities to warrant a traffic study. The bike path that runs along Cemetery Road, there were some concerns that, there are going to be cars crossing the bike path. That's going to be the case no matter what goes on this property. Cars are going to cross the bike path. But if you have 30 cars a day, that's a lot different than if you had a gas station or a restaurant or some other use that really generates traffic. So I don't think that should be a concern of yours. Impact on value was another issue that was raised. At the PZB hearing, David Urbanic, who is a commercial broker with experience in self-storage facilities, that had no connection to this project. He was not the broker on the project or anything like that. He said there's no empirical evidence that a Class A facility has any impact on property value of adjacent, contiguous, or nearby property. And interestingly, Member Paff at the hearing, I think he was skeptical about that, but he actually, to his credit, said, I did some of my own research, and he said, I found a study that looked at 5 different facilities, and they found no negative impact on property values of adjoining residential properties. So, those are things we hope you consider. There were issues about noise. Mr. Ziegler said this will meet your noise ordinance. It shouldn't be an issue. The lighting has been reviewed and approved by the village. You received some petitions from the neighbors. We ask that you take those with a grain of salt. There was one that was purportedly signed by business owners. Mr. Sachs was concerned about that. He didn't want to be coming into a village where the business owners were not supportive of this use. So he was able to reach 12 of the 15 businesses. 7 of the people who signed this petition said that they didn't have the authority to sign for their businesses. Then there were 2. Crystal Sosa was contacted twice by Christina Blessing, and she said that Ms. Blessing represented that she was a Gurnee board member. Sosa said that she didn't say she was opposed to this, she just said there was no need for this for the facility that she works at. And finally, she said that her signature On the petition is not her signature. Somebody wrote her signature, and she did not authorize anybody to write her signature in. Kim Martinez is another person who signed. She said she wasn't aware of the full development details. She felt she wasn't given accurate information, and she wants her name removed from the petition. Now, these aren't my words. We provided the emails to you. So please take the petitions with a grain of salt. I do a lot of this, and I tend not to pay much attention to petitions because you can go circulate them, people will sign them. But in this case, these were bothersome facts that we did find. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to John Swerk, who is the architect on the project.
Hello, thanks for taking the time to listen to me. I'll try to make this quick. So maybe if you flip a couple of pages there. Yeah, that'd be great. So the building design incorporates similar design of adjacent commercial buildings on that intersection. Road access, which was stated as limited to Cemetery Road, which will eliminate any Washington Street access or exiting. Again, most other developments, gas station, car washes, whatever, would probably want to go out onto Washington. The west and north buildings create good barriers to the adjacent residential existing homes. Landscaping has been reviewed and meets the village requirements. We've also agreed to increase the requirement of evergreen trees to provide year-round coverage. The lighting photometrics have been submitted, and it all has zero lighting at the property lines. Basically, how we have that laid out with the two perimeter buildings by the residential, we kind of call it a fortress design, so that the back of those walls facing the residential, for one, they're masonry, which was brought up by the staff to, try to assist with that. It really does create and then all your lighting is in those main aisles, which are 8 feet above the ground. There's no high poles or anything. So they're all building mounted lighting, basically just lighting up the aisles, and nothing spills over to the residential. They pointed out about the police department issues. That was that. So how that is set up is that the corner, the L-shaped corner at Cemetery and Washington, has a retail facility facing Cemetery Road. That's approximately a little over 10,200, I believe. And that is the only retail on the facility. That will also house the offices, or the office for the storage center. You'll come in off of Cemetery Road. There's actually a security gate. There would be key card access or code access that is the same as you go to the north. When you want to come in or exit there also, the gate will open with the key code. And that really helps these days, that if there is someone who no longer is a tenant, they don't have keys, they don't have codes, it's just removed from the system, they have no access. And then the interior facilities, an interesting fact on this one is although there's self-storage, only about 30% of that self-storage actually has overhead doors facing the outside. When you see those deeper buildings in the middle and along Cemetery, those also have walk-in corridors where it's climate controlled. So you're parking outside, bringing your stuff inside. And those don't have, obviously, roll-up doors and things like that. So it's, again, another key card access system to get into those buildings, only in the unit, only of the building of the unit you actually rent. As far as design, the next slide, exterior. That's just a view looking from the corner. Again, that view will not be seen by anybody because the buildings in the back are very short. But we are trying to highlight a nice facade along Washington and Cemetery. It's masonry walls, cement board siding, aluminum glass glazing, and parapets and or gabled roofs, and a lot of articulation along the facades. And even the storage building further down Cemetery Road, we want that front-facing facade to be very attractive to the village and people driving by. Go one more, it's probably just a little bit of a blow-up. Yeah, some other closer elevation renderings. Again, really to make it look like it could be retail, but just doesn't have front doors. Go one more. Yeah, just other views. And the bottom view, that's a view of the storage areas that are not seen from the street in any manner, which is a typical drive-up type of unit. And I believe that is the last page. Village benefits, I think the attorney can come back and maybe go through.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Peter Knorr. I'm currently the president of the Illinois Self-Storage Association. Currently, we have just over 100 owner-operators in the state of Illinois, and we have about 300 facilities under all of the association members in the state. I'm also the president of You Store It Self-Storage. We currently operate 22 facilities. And the reason I'm coming up here today is I don't think anybody's had the opportunity to really explain to everybody here a little bit more of the science of self-storage and a little bit more about our industry. There's a pretty fascinating report that comes out every few years by the National Self-Storage Association. It's called the Self-Storage Almanac. They do surveys on the 50,000 self-storage facilities across the country. And an interesting fact that they discovered a little while ago was that 80% of the initial decision makers to lease a self-storage unit is female. And why is that important? Well, they might not be the ones moving the physical belongings into the space, but they're the ones renting. And so these next generation properties, the purpose-built properties like Ron's proposing here, not like a renovation or an old property that you might see like Red Dot or an extra space self-storage. They're old. We're on our 5th generation builds now, and we've identified who our customer base is. And that's why there's inviting lighting. There's a retail storefront. There's a customer there. There's a staff member there to greet the customer as they walk in the door. So to that extent, why are they storing with us? Well, it's one of the 3 major reasons. There's a death in the family, a divorce, there's dislocation, they're moving, their kids are going to college. It's one of these reasons, right? And what are they storing? Well, a lot of times, they're storing their treasures, their memories, their dreams, and these are things that you want to accommodate for. You can't be offering a property like this that's a next generation build with the security features that it has without promising a sense of security for these people to come rent. And so storage is a little bit of a commodity when you come to grips with it. It's not an innovative product. Every 10 by 10 is going to offer you the same space. It's not like a cell phone where you have 1 to 5 gigabytes of data and you're like, well, I want that one. I'll pay more. Maybe we'll get an extra $5 if it's climate controlled. The hallways are carpeted. They're well lit. They're censored, sensor controls. But what you provide are 3 major aspects. It's your customer service, it's your location, and it's your security. And those are the 3 differentiators that you have. So to that extent, if you understand who your customer is, that's why location is important. You want somewhere that has a reasonably good traffic count. You don't want to be at the dead-end industrial park at the edge of Gurnee, because who's your purchaser? Who's your customer base? It's the mom in the neighborhood. And she's going to be renting the unit. She doesn't want to drive down a gravel road and pass 15 catch basin storage yards and then have to go rent a unit where there's no staff. And that's not what's been proposed here by Ron. So, I think it's something important to keep in mind is the location and then the customer service aspect. When people are coming to us, it's probably one of the more stressful days they're having in their lives. Typically you have 100 decisions in a day that you're going to make. Well, the day that you're coming to us because there's a death in the family or your son's going to college, right? You're making 150, 200 decisions that day. It's horrible. So that's why we're offering locks. That's why we have a manager on site. That's why the property looks clean. It looks inviting. The hallways are carpeted. That's why we have soft candies instead of hard candies, because if you have a kid with you and they're choking on a hard candy, all of a sudden your day's got more stressful. But we've worked into a little bit more of the science of who our customer is and how we can cater to them. And I know the last item that everybody seems to have had some concern of, but I've been talked to a little bit about it, is the security. And I could talk to you a little bit about the security of new self-storage facilities. This is a proposal for a purpose-built, ground-up self-storage facility. It's not a renovation. It's not a property that's been open for 20 years that can't get to the new generations of builds. Self-storage was invented, I think, in the 70s, the late 70s. The first one was by Public Storage in El Cajon, California. But now we're on our like 5th or 6th generation of storage builds. These aren't like private storage sheds where you call somebody on a cell phone and you say, hey, I'll swing by and sign a lease. All of our leases are electronic. The property has PTI keypads to get in and out, so they're recorded through a StoreLogix program. There's 2 terabytes of data on all the cameras, and they cover every 2,000 square feet. So you're going to have camera footage on just about every ounce of the property. Even when you get into the building, if somebody goes in a door after hours, there's alarms, access alarms. So, and they don't make any noise. They could just ring the police department if somebody's there when they shouldn't be there, or after access hours. But truth be told, the crime is rather de minimis, if any, on these storage facilities. People are really just moving in their treasures, memories, and dreams, and they're hoping that they stay there for security, and that's what we're providing. That's our job. We wouldn't be in business if we weren't able to do that. So, a little bit about the storage industry and a little bit of science of who our customer is. We do manage properties here, and one for Ron actually currently, and we're a family-run organization. Our operational style is we have walkthroughs in the morning, walkthroughs in the afternoon, monthly audits. Our properties are run extremely tight, and we wouldn't have been in business for the last 30 years if we weren't a part of the communities that we serve. So we sponsor softball leagues, park districts, all different types of events in the communities that we serve. So anyways, I wanted to thank you for your time. And I'll let...
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Thank you for the rest of you making your presentations. We appreciate that. So at this point, we've got about 12 minutes, so I'm guessing we won't get through all of you, right, in 12 minutes, but nonetheless, we'll get started, right? So for those that have been sworn in, it can be either for or against the petitioner. We'll open the floor, and if you don't have to have a long line up there, but if you can stay in your seat for a while, maybe 2 or 3 get in line, and then you can make your presentation. Presentation's always to the board. Please don't make your comments directly to the petitioner or anybody else, and if we could refrain. I'm just assuming everybody will be on their best behavior. I appreciate the decorum that was allowed to the petitioner, and hopefully that will continue as the presentations are made here with each of the people testifying. So, sir, if you could please state your name and your address.
Is it okay if I pull this down?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mayor Hood, honorable trustees, my name is Don Adams. I've been an active member of the Gurnee community my entire life, and I've lived at 6201 Brittany Court for the past 21 years with my wife and my 2 kids. I'd like to start off tonight with asking you a question. Why are we here? Why are we wasting all of our time and energy to discuss a development proposal for a business that simply does not meet the zoning requirements of the property in question? Why are we going to discuss the crime, the disruption, and the negative impact that a self-storage facility will have on the local community? And why are we entertaining this agenda item when Gurnee's Planning and Zoning Board unanimously said no to this proposal back in August? Well, the short answer is simple. The applicants, Ron and Christine Sachs, want to. They want to push through their business plan despite the fact that this is not good for the local community. And what they're really asking you, Mayor Hood, and trustees, is to undermine and disregard the due diligence, competence, and recommendation of your very own Planning and Zoning Board that you appointed. They are asking you to take a 125,000 square foot giant square peg and jam it into a round hole. They are asking you, Mayor Hood, and trustees to take on the risk, disruption, and damage that this development will create in the community. So my statement tonight is an update to a letter that I sent to all of you as a formal response to a series of communications that the applicants, Ron and Christine Sachs, have shared with you. Specifically, I'm referring to an email titled Next Steps between Ron Sachs and Dave Ziegler, dates of correspondence September 1st and September 14th of 2021, and a letter to the village board members sent by Ron Sachs, subject titled Ron and Christine Sachs Development Proposal, Rezoning and Annexation of 16530 West Washington Street and 34644 North Cemetery Road. In addition, I'll be referring to a follow-up letter titled Regarding Ron and Christine Sachs Development Proposal, Rezoning and Annexation of 16530 West Washington Street and 34644 North Cemetery Road. All of the communications that I'm referring to, all of the data points that I'm referring to have been obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. So before I go into the inaccurate components of the applicant's communications to you, let's just hit the pause button for a minute and take a look at the current state of affairs and facts regarding the property in question. Fact number one, the rezoning and annexation of 16530 West Washington Street and 34644 North Cemetery Road is planned for residential-friendly commercial use according to the village's comprehensive plan. Fact number two, storage facilities per Gurnee's zoning ordinance require heavy highway commercial or industrial zoning. These are the facts. Fact number three, this is the third time that the applicants, Ron and Christine Sachs, have made this proposal to the village board or the Planning and Zoning Committee. This has been the fourth time in total that a self-storage facility has been proposed for the property in question, and it has been rejected every single time. On August 18th, 2021, the Gurnee Planning and Zoning Board held a formal public hearing and voted unanimously against this development proposal. And on September 1st, 2021, Ron Sachs emailed Dave Ziegler as a notification that Ron and Christine Sachs intend to move forward with their proposal for consideration from the village board. And in the same communication, Ron asks for confirmation, and I quote, "The public is not allowed to speak." Well, tonight the public's going to speak, and you're going to hear all of our very real concerns as citizens of Gurnee and the facts and data surrounding the zoning requirements of this property and why there should not be a self-storage facility constructed on the property in question. The applicant's communications to you are filled with inaccuracies to sell you on a version of their truth and their idea. Ron Sachs continues to downplay that crime has happened at self-storage facilities. Their presentation just a moment ago spent a great deal of time talking about the technological advances of security monitoring systems for self-storage facilities. The fact is, crime happens at self-storage facilities. This is an undeniable truth. Drug manufacturing, drug distribution, sex trafficking, prostitution, assault, sexual assault, disposal of dead bodies, and theft are well reported, not just throughout the country, but right here in Illinois. And yes, their attorney made reference to an attack on a teenage girl on November 21st, just a few weeks ago. A 50-year-old man physically attacked and sexually assaulted a female teenager in Zion at a self-storage facility. It was also reported that this man was living in one of the storage units. Granted, they may have not had the state-of-the-art technology, but the last time I checked, assault is still assault. In 2017, the FBI raided a self-storage facility in Beach Park, Illinois, shutting down a crack cocaine manufacturing and distribution business. And year to date, our very own Gurnee Police Department has responded to over 100 calls at the four self-storage facilities that they are responsible for. In 2020, the grand total was 110. So by approving this proposal, we can statistically expect the Gurnee Police Department's involvement with responding to calls at self-storage facilities to increase by 20 to 25%. That's one call every 3 days. So now that I've shared this information with you on the crime alone, Is this a risk that the village board and the mayor is willing to take? Are you prepared to look at your community and your neighbors in the eyes and say, this is great for Gurnee? Ron Sachs continues to make a statement that the data presented regarding the sheer amount of self-storage facilities located in a 5-mile radius of the proposed site isn't accurate. Well, these are the 17 facilities that are located within a 5-mile radius. Sherlock Self-Storage, Sterling Storage, U-Haul Moving and Storage of Gurnee, Metro Self-Storage, Eagle Storage, Secure Storage, Highway 41 Self-Storage, CubeSmart Self-Storage, U-Haul Moving and Storage of Grays Lake, Extra Space Storage, Red Dot Storage, Public Storage, CubeSmart Self-Storage, Extra Space Storage, Sunset Self-Storage, and Metro Self-Storage. 17 facilities, all located within 5 miles, many of them within 3 miles. But let's get back to the zoning. The applicants are asking for an exception to the current zoning of this parcel to, and I quote, subsidize development and operations. Who benefits from this exception? The community members of Gurnee, the village of Gurnee? No. The applicants are the only people that benefit from this exception. Ron and Christine Sachs are the only people that will benefit from this zoning exception. And finally, Ron Sachs opens his letter to you stating that he and his wife have been Gurnee residents for over 20 years. I'm going to take a moment and say have is the most operative word, and it's being used in the most misguided way. The applicants do not represent, nor do they care what happens in the local Gurnee community, because frankly, if they did, they would listen to the community, they would listen to their neighbors, they would take the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board, and they would withdraw this proposal. Looking back at the transcripts from the August 18th Planning and Zoning Board meeting, Christine Sachs claims to, and I quote, love Gurnee, and that Gurnee is her, I quote, forever home. However, according to recent real estate, residency, and voter registration records, Ron and Christine Sachs have recently purchased a $1.3 million home in Naples, Florida. Christine Sachs has been a Florida resident since May of 2020 and a registered voter in Collier County, Florida. And recently on social media was quoted as, I'm ready to get out of here and live in Florida, end quote. So my question is very simple. Who's running this locally owned family business while the applicants are fulfilling their 6 months and 1 day resident requirement in the state of Florida? In the latest letter from Ron and Christine Sachs, they are making an attempt to discredit the validity of the petitions that we, the Gurnee community, and the local businesses have signed. First, their efforts are reactionary based on their own Freedom of Information Act request when they learned of these petitions. For the record, I am the person responsible for contacting and meeting with all of the businesses and assisted living facilities with the exception of Marsh Funeral Home and Shepherd Premier Senior Living doing business as Gurnee Manor. My approach to meeting with these business owners and people who told me they were authorized to sign a petition on behalf of their organizations was pretty simple. I picked up the phone and called them. I asked them when it would be a good time to stop by and share with them the development plans which are on display for tonight. In 2 cases, I had to wait in the lobby for maybe 10 minutes to meet with that decision maker. I shared the Sachs plans, and I also let them know that Gurnee's Planning and Zoning Board had already unanimously voted no on this development project. Shockingly, if the applicants are so concerned about local businesses accepting this business proposal, why was this the first time that all of these businesses had ever heard of the development plan and proposal? So yes, I have personally met with nearly every business and assisted living facility in the immediate area of the proposed location. And for the businesses that did not sign the petition, you heard me correctly, there were businesses that did not sign the petition due to current business relationships what they have with the property owner in question. They all still maintain the same response, which is no, we don't need a self-storage facility on the northwest corner of Cemetery Road and Washington Street.
So, Mr. Adams, I'm going to have to interrupt you. We're about a minute away from our regular board meeting, so you can certainly continue at the appropriate time. So we're just going to end this meeting at this time, and we'll restart. We're going to start our new meeting in about a minute.
I can wrap up in a minute, Mayor Hood.
We're going to start our meeting on time, so you can start again. We'll give everybody an opportunity to speak. It's just going to take place in our regular village board meeting. So,
all right, thank you.
Thanks. So at this point, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by trustee Garner, second by trustee Thorstensen.
Well, actually, we're just taking a recess.
Recess? Okay. All those in favor? Thanks. So we'll start in about a minute. Ready?
Yep.
I'm going to call the regular village board meeting for December 6, 2021 to order. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Present.
Balmas.
Present.
Thorstensen.
Here.
Woodside.
Here.
Ross. Garner.
Here.
6 present.
We all stand together for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we'll start with the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
As presented. Motion by trustee Malmus, second by trustee Garner. Is that right? Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Woodside.
Yes.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6 aye.
Pat?
Item number 1, approval of the minutes from the November 15th, 2021 meeting. Item number 2, approval of ordinance 2021-76, amending Chapter 32, Section 32-36, entitled Planning and Zoning Fees of the Gurnee Municipal Code. Item number 3, approval of ordinance 2021-77, authorizing execution of a professional services agreement with Rhmg Engineers, Inc. for engineering services for the Lawrence Avenue water main replacement and Route 21 water main loop improvements. Item number 4, approval of awarding the Fire Station Number 3 flashing yellow warning beacon installation project to the low bidder, Hometown Electric, Inc., at a cost of $85,226.30. Item number 5, approval of payroll for period ending November 19, 2021, in the amount of $866,424.56. Item number 6, approval of bills for period ending December 6, 2021, in the amount of $2,554,621.94.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion, trustee Garner, second, trustee Thorstensen?
No, it was
Oh, trustee Quinn. All
But
right,
there's a discrepancy on the
Okay.
attachment
all right.
for the dollar amount of the bill.
Which item?
Item 6.
You're correct. The bill amount is $2,544,621.94.
So, still a motion by trustee Garner,
As amended.
as amended, correct?
Agreed.
Second by trustee O'Brien. A roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. So the next item on the agenda is the recognition of Warren Township High School student-athlete state qualifiers. It's a great opportunity for the village board to be able to recognize some great things that happen at Warren Township High School, and not the smallest of these are what some great athletes have done at the high school just this last fall. So we looked at it as an opportunity to be able to have you come forward tonight to be able to recognize what you've done. We recognize that it's a huge sacrifice on your part, the amount of time that you've put into your sport. That might relate to what you do in college and what you might end up doing as a profession, maybe. But even beyond that, what you've learned to dedicate your time and your efforts will pay dividends, and no matter what you do. So we in the Village of Gurnee really appreciate that, and we want to recognize that. And oftentimes, young adults are not heard. So we want that to be an opportunity that at the village board level that you are heard. We do recognize what you've done, and we want to hear your name and hear what's happened. So let's see, who from the high school is here that would like to come down with me? Dr. Alt?
Bring them all down.
No, we're going to start with the athletic director and Dr. Alt. So I'd like to give you an opportunity maybe just to talk a little bit about the athletics at Warren Township High School and what's been accomplished, and then we could introduce each of the athletes and get a chance to have pictures and hear a little bit about them, if that's okay. Right.
Sure. Just briefly, thank you very much, Mayor Hood and trustees, for inviting us to a special night. Certainly, one of the things we love to honor all of our teams and individuals, but one thing that's unique to me just about having our cross-country runners and swimmers here tonight is just to echo some of the comments that were made. In swimming and cross-country specifically, are sports that depend on discipline and determination, setting goals and self-improvement, things that we look for in our students all the time in our student athletes. And it was so beautifully exemplified by our swimmers and cross-country runners this fall. So we're very proud of them as well, and we greatly appreciate the opportunity to recognize them. Mrs. Belmont's going to give a little more specifics about the recognition for these groups.
Thank you. Kind of repeating what everyone said, it is a great honor for all these athletes to be here and their parents, because what they've accomplished as being state qualifiers doesn't happen very often, and it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of determination, and the parents have a lot to do with that as well as the athletes themselves. So what I'm going to do is introduce each team, or each sport that has members. The boys cross country team actually qualified to the state tournament as a team, and it was the first time Warren has done that as a team and actually ran at state. The first time they qualified as a team was last year, and it was during COVID, so there was sectionals where they qualified, but no state tournament. So this is the first time the Warren boys cross country team did run at the state meet. So I'm going to introduce each one of them. Do you want them to come up? All right, the boys cross country team, come on up. I'll have you guys come first. Come on up. I would like to mention each one's name. First, we have Ryan Alessier. Ozzy Bandera. Clayton Cantrell. Calix Flores. Nathan Garcia. Cole Cather. Jesse Kowalski. Connor Lockwood. Ryan Moats. Fahim Rafi. Is here tonight. Kimmy Vesley. Max Zeisler. And we have David Lara, who is All-State, IHSA All-State, because he placed 24th in the state meet. And we have Luke Wiley, who was IHSA All-State by placing 4th at the state meet.
Thank you very much. I just gives me great joy and hope that our future is bright. You know, sometimes we think, oh no, it's gonna what's gonna happen after us old guys get out of the way, and it's like you guys are gonna take our place. So I'm looking forward to it. So thank you. You want to have them all?
Four more people. I have 4 more.
Oh yeah, 4. Okay.
So from girls cross country, we have them here, come on up. Huh? Okay. We have Emma Luang. And that here is Mia Pasha. She was IHSA All-State by placing 6th, but she's not here today. And next, girls swimming and diving. Yep. First, we have Haley Benoit. And we have Grace Beavers, who is IHSA All-State by placing 5th in the 100 backstroke.
What I'd like to do is if we could have some photographs, and actually trustees, you want to get in a picture with these? You can mix in, or you want to just make it not so complicated? What do you want to do? Not so complicated, all right. All right, come on, you guys come on, bookends. Come on, John, you guys come on. Not hard to hold that smile, is it, guys? All right, thank you very much. So again, just really appreciate the opportunity to recognize young adults for all the dedication they've done. This is just warms my heart, and just knowing all that the parents have put in to get them to the places that they need to be, and encouragement that they have, as well as their coaches, the administrators that make this all happen at Warren High School. So we appreciate that, and we root you on for what great things you have ahead. I didn't catch to see how many were seniors and how many were going to come back next year, but hopefully a good group of you are still coming back next year so we can see some more. So thanks again. So we don't have any reports or old business, right, Pat?
Correct.
So we're going to go right back to what we were doing.
Yep.
Okay. So at this point, we're going to reconvene what we were doing at 6:15. And when I so rudely interrupted Mr. Adams, if you'd like to step right back up, and then just all the same rules apply. You're still sworn in. And then we'll just go through and people can testify, and then when we get to the end of that, then the board will discuss and vote. So, Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Mayor Hood and trustees, for allowing me to come back up and finish my statement. And I'll make this brief. So, hundreds of residents, local businesses, the assisted living facilities, and the Zoning and Planning Board have all said no to this proposal. But we're still here tonight to discuss the zoning exception to construct a self-storage facility directly across the street from an elementary school's playground and next door to 2 well-established subdivisions with hundreds of families and small children. Despite the zoning requirements, despite the data and facts about crime that has happened in the area, despite the fact that there are 17 self-storage facilities located within 5 miles, and despite the fact that the applicants have misrepresented their residency and their commitment to the community, all while being under oath. Is it just me, or is this business proposal getting worse by the minute? Making these exceptions to our zoning requirements will discourage people from investing in their homes in Gurnee. This will set a horrible, horrible precedent that at any time an industrial business can be constructed next to your home despite the zoning regulations. And that's what we're talking about here tonight. This is nothing against a self-storage facility. This has everything to do with a self-storage facility being constructed at this location. I shared my concerns with Mayor Hood at a recent Beer with the Mayor at Timothy O'Toole's in Gurnee. And during our conversation, we talked about the enormous responsibility that all of you have for the future of Gurnee. You literally have the power to change the landscape of Gurnee forever. Mayor Hood, you told me that the voice of the community matters, and we have a lot of voices from the community tonight. You also said, how can we, as elected officials, look our neighbors in the eye and say, we're going to do something that you don't want? The opposition towards this self-storage facility is not a few residents, as Ron Sachs describes in his letter to you. This opposition is an entire community telling you what we want for the future of Gurnee. I stand before you tonight as your neighbor. I stand in front of you tonight as a very concerned member of the Gurnee community, and I'm asking for you to support the Planning and Zoning Board's unanimous decision and say no to this development proposal. I am asking you to be patient, thoughtful, demanding, and uncompromising when it comes to annexing and developing the remaining unincorporated areas of Gurnee. And I am asking you to not make exceptions to your own comprehensive plan. Instead, let's make the northwest corner of Washington Street and Cemetery Road a showcase for what we want Gurnee to be today and for what we want for the future of Gurnee. And to put it simply, it's not a self-storage facility. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Christine Blessing, and my home is 6189 Brittany Court. Like many homes along the property line at stake, our house is set far back on our lot. We have a small backyard, and the proximity of garage number 2 to our home is invasive. Based on the proposed 40-foot setback, this long, public, drive-up storage garage would be the closest of 6 buildings, approximately 90 feet or 30 steps from our back door. And with no wall separating it from our small yard, the garage would be right outside our living room, kitchen, and bedroom windows. As Don mentioned, at 2 informal reviews in 2020, with no neighbors present, the Planning and Zoning Board expressed many apprehensions with self-storage proposals for this property, including how and what storage units are often used for, specific concerns with the proximity of the drive-up units, and ultimately the incompatibility with the number of adjacent residential homes. On August 18th, the Zoning Board formally, unanimously voted no. Despite these no's, we're still here entertaining the idea of annexing the land, rezoning it as a C2 planned unit development, and on top of that, allowing a special use permit for self-storage. The Sachs are asking to zone this as C2 PUD, with 92% of the proposed structures representing a C3 heavy highway commercial or I1 industrial business, and only 8% representing a C2 business. This is a severe abuse of a planned unit development. Why aren't they asking for a C3 or I1 PUD to accommodate this massive facility? Because that would highlight the clear contradiction of this request to our village's comprehensive plan, which calls for residential-friendly commercial on the corner and residential zoning for the remainder of the property. I've abbreviated my statement tonight to focus on facts that I believe are paramount to informing the decisions being voted on tonight. Gurnee's ordinance specifies that self-storage should only be allowed in highway commercial and industrial areas. Our ordinance clearly states that self-storage is not allowed in C2 zones, even with a special use permit. And our comprehensive plan calls for more dense residential off Cemetery Road. This will be difficult to accomplish here because people don't want to live right next to 6 public self-storage garages. Today, more than 300 individuals and individuals from 15 local businesses were represented in a protest opposing this rezoning and self-storage proposal. I understand that the Sachs were not pleased with the business petition submitted to the village and reached out to every business after the fact to interrogate employees. There was also an accusation of forgery for one signature. Rest assured, There is email documentation supporting this business in question, and we're happy to comply with any digital forensics necessary to appease the applicant's accusation. This room full of concerned residents and all of the letters that you all received cannot be minimized. None of these people are forged. If the applicant wants to deflect and spend their time attempting to discredit a signature on a protest instead of addressing residential concerns and zoning conflicts, so be it. Despite what the applicant claims, there are no self-storage facilities in Gurnee in straight C2 zoning today. There's one facility in the East Grand Gateway District, Extra Space Storage, that backs up to one 1960s home at the end of the street. That facility is surrounded by massive brick wall. It's located off 41 and has a special EGG zoning overlay that supersedes all other zoning. Our village targeted the East Grand Gateway as a revitalization corridor and prioritized it for redevelopment, and for that reason, it should not serve as a precedent. All of the other Gurnee facilities are not Zone C2. They're located much farther away from residential, across major roads from homes, they're properly surrounded by walls, and they do not back garages up to homes in this manner. Article 9 of our ordinance states PUDs should only be applied to further applications that provide special compensating amenities to the village and must accomplish very specific objectives. PUDs are not intended to be loopholes. This proposal absolutely does not achieve better utilization of land than is possible through strict application of standard zoning. As many neighbors have already attested, it will adversely affect flooding, soil, drainage, native wildlife, and other natural conditions. 6 garage buildings will not encourage the construction of appropriate aesthetic amenities and certainly will not enhance the character of the site, which today is an open field with barns set back away from homes. Article 16 states that exceptions may be granted where it's determined that such modifications do not negatively affect the value and enjoyment of surrounding property, the provision of municipal services, or traffic. To be granted such exceptions, Mr. and Mrs. Sachs must demonstrate superior design and enhanced amenities, and in no case may an exception be granted unless they demonstrate a substantial benefit to the village. This proposal is loaded with requests for exceptions. It does not offer significant benefit, and it opens the door to a wave of threats to our community: crime, negative impact on property value, neighboring schools, bus routes and bus stops, pedestrian and bike paths, and neighboring businesses. Self-storage will not generate tax dollars beyond the sale of tape and boxes and will not provide jobs for Gurnee residents with only 3 employees. It likely will not even serve residents in the immediate area. I am painfully reciting code tonight because reading it makes it so blatantly obvious that the developer is asking you to disregard all of these rules that are in place to protect residents. At the zoning board meeting, after the floor was closed to the public, the Sachs had a realtor assert, based on 0 facts, that this would not hurt property value. The applicant is correct that there's not a plethora of research citing property value impact from self-storage, because self-storage is not typically constructed this close to residential. But I hope you took a moment to review the very relevant third-party research shared in October that specifically cites several studies proving that nearby pasture land increases the value of residential property, whether or not the land is permanently protected. The research discusses multiple situations in which a residential view is impaired by new development and the value then drops. It is a fact that the market assigns significant value to desirable views, irrespective of whether such views are protected by zoning ordinance or law. When interviewing city planners, I learned that many towns leave properties in arterial corridors like this undeveloped until an opportunity offering indisputable and enduring value is proposed. In Collier County, Florida, where the applicant, Christine Sachs, is currently a resident and registered voter, commissioners placed a year-long ban on self-storage as a land use along a 7-mile stretch of US 41. The moratorium was to address the fact that frontage along this main street was acquired by self-storage companies and gas stations, and to quote the commissioners, made the area look like a slum. During the ban, the county established new restrictions on storage uses, and many cities have done the same to protect residential development. This proposal was presented as a local family business. to the zoning board and the village, and we later learned this is not the case. The applicant lives in Florida at least 6 months out of the year and plans to hire a management company to run the self-storage. When asked, they would not disclose what company that was. Residency would not be such an issue if this wasn't a set-it-and-forget-it type of business, and if the applicant didn't stand up at the zoning board meeting and claim, after swearing in, that they are Gurnee residents and plan to spend the rest of their lives here. I want to take this opportunity to clarify for the record that my primary concern is not with the berm, and it's not with one masonry wall. It is with the compound of garages backing up to my house. There's a reason the applicants did not take the temperature of the neighborhood for this endeavor. Actions speak louder than words, and the applicant's actions to date do not support any of their claims. I'll close with 4 concerns that were not reflected in the annexation agreement or the list of developer commitments in the village's memo to trustees on December 2nd. 1, the applicant acknowledged the problem of noise and bright lights, and I'll argue that skipping a wall and lining the property with a noise-generating garage is not a genuine solution. It's a way to save money. People get upset when their neighbors place sheds too close to their property line. This proposal has a giant shed backing up to lots of homes. Changing one wall to masonry on a garage that's encroaching on residential is not a concession and does not change the fact that they're still asking to use it as their barrier. Constructing a massive development, number 2, constructing a massive development primarily of metal materials is against Gurnee zoning ordinance. Number 3, none of the businesses on the other 3 corners operate with such long hours, 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and with such limited employee presence. The proposed hours are not compatible with adjacent businesses, and they're not residential friendly. Number 4, the Sachs and their landscaper at the zoning board meeting claimed their plan would make it feel like we have our own private forest in our backyard. This is very deceiving. I'll reiterate that the transparent brush behind our house is a single row of deciduous trees with buckthorn in between. It is not evergreen. Many trees have died since we moved in. The zoning board asked for results from a tree survey. 6 months later, the Sachs have still not conducted this tree survey, which begs the question, why? If you're trying to prove a sufficient buffer to residential, why wouldn't you conduct a tree survey? How big is the canopy of the existing trees, and how will you grow a forest in the 40-foot buffer under its shade? It's difficult to see proximity issues from Cemetery Road because of the tall weed in the field, but I provided photos for you to see how close our home is to the property line and the thin line of brush that will not hide nor buffer the massive metal garages overshadowing our home and its accompanying noise. We cannot pick up our house and move it forward on our lot. We are respectfully asking the trustees to back the zoning board's decision and vote no tonight based on the proposal's incompatibility with the general land use of adjacent properties and based on contradictions with the comprehensive plan. We're not against developing this land. There are no issues with the current barn because it was constructed with an appropriate setback. We support development that fits the zoning for this land. A residential-friendly business should go here given the proximity to homes. Similar to Honey Orthodontics across the street, a doctor's office, physical therapist, chiropractor, dermatologist, a building with a proper setback, and a business with residential-friendly operating hours, and no metal garage doors outside our windows. There are plenty of properly zoned parcels on the market right now where this facility could be constructed. Annexing and rezoning this property for self-storage is not appropriate under any circumstances, and the proximity of the proposed garages to people's homes is egregious. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mayor, village manager, and members of the board, my name is Perry Howard. I live on Cemetery Road, and tonight I'm representing 369 451, which is set as 0 Cemetery Road for the tax record, 34,693 and 34,739, all properties over there on the east side of the Cemetery Road. Previously, both me and the gentleman from 369 has sent you to the planning board letters and pictures, correct? Mr. I hope is it Mutes? Mutes, I'm sorry, I apologize. But we've had conversation recently regarding an overpumping of the water tower over there on Cemetery Road, came onto my property, and we had a good conversation, and it's an issue that I hope we can work through in the future. At any rate, the catch basin in front of 369, that's kind of the main issue here, is the amount of water that will be coming from that property. Now, I'm going to share something with you. Don't believe everything you hear from these people and engineers, because let me just present this fact. If you take a piece of property, you put 320,000 square feet of surface area in asphalt, blacktop, metal roof, asphalt shingle, whatever it is there going to be more water accumulating on the ground, or is there going to be less water? They're going to tell you, and they try to sell you with the issue that, oh, they'll get no more water, they'll get no more water. We sent pictures to the planning board, and you should all have them. If you don't, we'll be happy to send them to you again. On that catch basin at 369, we've had it come over the road from the amount of water, just from area properties in that. The catch basins can't handle it. It comes over on the ground, through that property at 369 to my property, which is behind it. It is a village property, but I have a county address, for lack of a better explanation, okay? So we collect all the rainwater from Washington Street up to the north side of 34739. In the past, I've been in contact with Scott Drabicki several times. I've had communications with him, and Bud Reed, who was a previous village engineer. Many of you may not even know him because it's been so long ago. We've been over there for 30 years or more. At any rate, I don't feel that the village should rezone this from a residential to a commercial district. I know they're looking at some changes from a C2 to C3, and I don't want to go into that because these other people spoke about that. What our concern is that this doesn't match or meet the Village of Gurnee's Compass 2040 plan. Why are we talking about it? They're talking about raising existing grades over 10 feet over there. So now take the hundreds of thousands of square feet of surface area that no longer is farmland or residential property which takes the water into the ground. It will now take it overground. They're going to tell you they're going to store it in a catch basin in the backyard over there, okay? Detention area, for a better explanation. Our concern over on the east side of Cemetery Road is that, but on top of that, they're taking the breakover point, and I talked to a couple people regarding this. The breakover point, which, think of a property like this, okay, for a better explanation. The breakover point is the point, the high point, and you're supposed to take the water this way, and they're supposed to take the water that way. That's not what they're doing. They're taking water from this side of the breakover point, and they're going to push it our way too. So when they tell you we're not taking any more water, they're lying to you. There's no other way to say it. You know, that's what's happening. So anyway, my point here is there's no plan for them to do anything with the R3 portion other than have a detention basin on it, okay? R3 is the primary use, is going to be retention. This plan was previously rejected for several reasons through the Plan Commission in August 2021, where a lot of us that were there spoke about it. There will be significant stormwater runoff, and if you do approve this, I sure hope you make them pay to put in a lift station and pump the water up to Washington Street, where there's bigger pipes instead of running over my property, okay? That is a doable thing. There are several catch basins in Lake County, mainly for sewer, not so much for stormwater, but there are a couple. I have talked with a couple of guys from the county regarding this. So it can be done. Significant stormwater runoff, that's an understatement. When you look at, I hope you all looked at the pictures because it'll give you a full understanding of what's going on over there. They're raising the grade significantly, and the impervious surface is going to be, I say substantial, it's way more than substantial. You'll be able to get that all from their plan. It's going to be in the hundreds of thousands of square feet. They say that we're not going to get any more water, but in fact, we will. What I'm not going to get into too much tonight is the additional things. They talk about no impact because of the lighting, the traffic, and the noise. There will be increased lighting, there will be increased traffic, and there will be increased noise. What I want to share with you is one thing. You go back several years ago, I don't know, maybe it was early 90s. There was developers in here for Gurnee Mills, and they said, when residents made the complaint that there's going to be so much more traffic with Gurnee Mills, and I'm not complaining about Gurnee Mills, don't get that impression. What I'm telling you is the developers will tell you one thing, and it's not the case. I remember the quote that the developer said, and he said, it's not going to increase the travel any more than 1 trip per minute. So don't tell me that they're not going to add any more water to the east side of Cemetery Road. If you let this plan go in, which, you know, I would hope that you don't, there's a couple things that I would recommend. I recommend that you, first, I would deny this plan based on what they're submitting. Your zoning board did not recommend this, but they sent it to the board anyway. I'm asking you to deny this project. If you do vote for this, a couple things need to be done. Have them find a suitable property. They can put a lift station in, like I mentioned before, and I believe they're taking their sewer and they're running it all the way around that development. If they can do that, they can certainly run their stormwater around there and put it in the Washington Street catch basins. Just from what I do know and what they're talking about adding, the cost of the land is somewhere around $1.4 million. Total project somewhere between $4 and $5 million. If they have to add $50,000 or $100,000, put a lift station in to pump it to Washington Street, you're talking about 1 to 2% of the total project, which isn't a big deal. Okay, I'm not going to say that I, approve of this plan or disapprove of this plan. I just don't think it's a good plan for the city, for the village. I think there's other things, and if you wait long enough, I think the right project will come along. So all I ask you is to put some serious thought into this and don't be steamrolled by the developer. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Blessing, and my home is 6189 Brittany Court. 30 steps. If metal building number 2 is constructed with a proposed 40-foot setback, it will be 90 feet or 30 steps from our door. That is 30 steps behind my family's kitchen, living room, and dining room and bedrooms. Please imagine having 125,000 square feet of mostly metal public storage garages 30 steps outside your window and the impact it would have on your family, young children, neighborhood, and community. Please consider this very short distance, 30 steps, and the impact your decision will have. The Sachs own a storage facility in Beach Park and noted that it is adjacent to residential, but the proximity to homes is nowhere near as close as the proximity for this site on Washington and Cemetery. Beach Park has only 4 buildings collectively making up 65,000 square feet of storage space. That's half the square footage proposed for construction along an entire row of homes. According to Google Earth, the Beach Park facility is approximately 375 feet away from the nearest home, with other homes even further away. And it sits behind a wetland detention and wooded area. For context, our home is 420 feet from Cemetery Road. So if we were granted the same 375-foot setback, there would be no room for these proposed structures on the lot. I hope you took a moment to read my response to the developer's list of public benefits, which were a stretch to say the least. It's been documented that this proposal does not meet current land use and C2 zoning requirements, and that the proposal contradicts the village's comprehensive plan, which calls for residential and residential-friendly commercial use for the property. Committing in an annexation agreement that the small portion of the property to the north would be a future dedication with no solid plans or financing, and/or extending Churchill Lane to a TBD public area is not a public benefit. It is a disturbance to Winchester Estates, and it does not outweigh the damage that would be done constructing industrial self-storage in such proximity to so many homes. One of the so-called benefits listed was enhanced property value. I think common sense alone would tell you that this is a fallacy. Ron Sachs himself admitted that there is a negative stereotype surrounding self-storage. Simply claiming that it's a stereotype does not negate how the public perceives these facilities. Even if it is just a stereotype, this negative perception does exist, so there is absolutely no denying that this would negatively impact property values of the surrounding area, especially the homes that are so close to the garages. I mean, who would want to buy a house that is 30 steps from a giant facility like this? And that's an actual question to you, because we're going to have to sell our home. I'm not going to put my family at that kind of risk. One of these negative perceptions of self-storage is crime. At the August zoning board meeting, after the floor was closed to the public, Mr. Schuler requested crime statistics. After swearing in, Ron Sachs responded, and this is a direct quote, "We also have one just for proximity use. It's on Washington, about 2.5 miles, the U-Haul out in front of CLC. Theirs is 24/7 nonstop, and in the last year and a half, which is as far back as the sheriff's department would go for us at the time because of the time constraint, we had to get the information, 18 months, not one call." The U-Haul he referenced is an indoor facility, not outdoor storage garages. So I could see how the numbers could be low, but something seemed off, so I took it upon myself to fact check his statement, and within 24 hours of my FOIA request, the police department was able to provide me with a list of 28 police calls to that specific facility for the period of January of 2020 to August 3rd of 21, not 0. I also received the storage crime statistics that the Gurnee Police Department provided to the village board, which included the Red Dot facility, CubeSmart, Extra Space, and Gurnee U-Haul for the period of 2015 to October of 2021. While the Sachs have insisted there is very little crime at self-storage facilities and asserted that crime associated with self-storage is just a stereotype, the real data tells a different story, and numbers do not lie. I've analyzed the same data that you all received. And instead of just cherry picking the information that I would want to tell the right story, I'm going to report the information the way it was actually presented. At these 4 facilities, on average, there were 23 calls to the police per facility per year. That means that should this proposal be approved, it's likely the police would be called to my backyard in response to 2 possible crimes every month. The Sachs used the word harmonious to describe the proposed storage facility and the position it will hold in our neighborhood. If this is true, it implies that we already have this level of criminal activity in our little corner of Gurnee, which begs the question, how many times have the police been called to Marsh Funeral Home, Honey Orthodontics, or the Montessori School? This level of police activity clearly does not already exist in this area, and the addition of this facility would not be harmonious. In 2020, there were 110 calls to the police at these 4 facilities in total. That was double the number that occurred in 2019 and quadruple the number that occurred in 2018. 2020 had the highest number of calls since 2017, and 2021 is on track to meet or exceed the volume of 2020. This data shows an increase in criminal activity occurring at existing self-storage facilities in our area. Regarding actual crimes and not just calls, 2020 had the highest number of crimes since 2015, and again, 2021 is on track to be just as bad as 2020, proving that crimes committed at self-storage facilities are on the rise. The Sachs have asserted that there will be security cameras as well as the ability to take pictures of license plates to deter criminal activity. Have you ever seen a Rhmg video of a thief breaking into a car or home? Did the camera stop them? I've even seen videos of brazen thieves stealing the physical Rhmg camera itself. Cameras do not equal security. With 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. access and employees only on site from 8:30 to 5:30, this proposal states there will be no employees present 40% of the time that the facility is open. When criminals want to commit a crime, they will, and bringing this level of criminal activity to our homes is unacceptable. There's a reason insurance charges extra for storing valuables at places like this. Thieves lurk where valuables reside. The Sachs are proposing to use the back of the buildings as a wall with light fencing to connect the other garages. In 2015, at both Red Dot and CubeSmart, criminals removed a portion of the fences to enter the facilities and break into storage units. In 2017, at CubeSmart, criminals jumped the fence to enter the facility. Who's to say that instead of hopping a fence, these criminals just won't turn around and consider my back door instead, especially considering that it's only 30 steps away? Lastly, while 2/3 of the crimes that were committed at these facilities were burglaries, unfortunately, much worse things can and often do happen. Just a few weeks ago, on November 21st, a man was charged with sexual assault by force and aggravated criminal sexual abuse of a teenage girl occurring at a self-storage facility just around the corner in Zion. This girl was visiting her family's storage unit when a man who was believed to be living in a storage unit assaulted her. Sadly, this is not the first time that something like this has happened at a self-storage facility, and it will not be the last. I have a wife and 2 little girls. My back door will be 30 steps from these storage garages. I cannot subject my family to that sort of risk, and as elected members of our village board, I hope you will not either. Thank you for your time.
Mayor Hood, honorable trustee board members, my name is Pavel Parada. I'm at 412 Churchill Lane. Gurnee zoning ordinance only allows self-storage in C3 and I1. Those designations make sense as they are often along highways. If you do a search of other self-storage facilities in the area, they look to be almost all on highway stretches. Neighboring parcels are either C1 or C2, so what is likely to go on the corner at stake is one of those designations, not C3, which is what a self-storage should be, should be.
Sir, could you talk into the microphone a little bit? Having a hard time hearing you.
Apologies, apologies. Not C3, which is what self-storage should be in as per Gurnee code. The businesses and land uses in this neighborhood are reflective of C1 and C2 zoning. Self-storage would not fit in with the neighborhood. The biggest argument here is that the developer is not really proposing a mixed-use development. This is a huge self-storage facility with a tiny, extremely minimal retail space component. The developer claims that they need the self-storage in order to offset costs for the retail portion. It will be beneficial only to them, not our community. There are plenty of retail spaces available in the area that can suit the needs for their small retail endeavor, and utilizing existing vacant retail space will benefit our community more than constructing a new self-storage facility. Developers' claim to benefit the community is that it will provide storage to affordable housing residents and assisted living facilities. With 17 existing storage facilities within a 5-mile radius and confirmation from said living facilities, it was noted there is no such need. Self-storage should not be added as a special use under the C2 zoning designation, as it's much better suited for industrial zone properties. There is a reason Gurnee planners did not allow self-storage in C commercial districts in the zoning ordinance. It's because it's not compatible with a commercial district and certainly not a residential-friendly commercial district. Gurnee should not bend the rules because this developer wants to offset its costs with self-storage. If the desire is to annex this property, then it should be annexed as residential-friendly, commercial, retail, and residential, just as the comprehensive plan envisions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Board. My name is Peter Stolzers. I live at 6186 Brittany Court. I've been here for 28 years, and I love this community. Have you ever driven by a public storage facility and looked at it and gone, wow, I love what they did with those overhead doors. Hey, look at that cyclone fencing. That's beautiful. Of course not, because they're ugly. They're filled with light, cement, steel, video cameras. If you put 4 towers on each corner of that property and some razor wire, you got a nice little prison. It's unsightly. There's a reason why public storage facilities are zoned C3. There's a reason why you have all chosen for that to be C2, and they're asking you to make an exception. Well, then this should be an exceptional use. I do not believe that a public storage facility passed that litmus test, and I hope you share my sentiment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Schroeder, and I'm a resident at 729 Strawberry Fields. And I just wanted to say, as a resident who does not live in a property that abuts to the proposal here tonight, I heard a comment at the very beginning from petitioner that said that petitions are usually disregarded because if you put something in front of someone, they'll just sign it. And I want to say that I am a resident of Gurnee and I signed the petition. And I think there's many people that signed that petition that do not live in a property that abuts against the proposal. And we are all here, and we signed that petition because we are concerned about how the village is being developed and what decisions you are making and how you're going to develop the village of Gurnee. And so I think also of importance is how you listen to the residents of Gurnee who do show concern about certain proposals that are put before you and then are asked for your approval. So I ask that you do pay attention to the petition and you do give it the respect that it deserves, and you give it the respect that every person who signed that petition, what they thought of and what they hope to portray to you when they did put their signature on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor Hood and the board. My name is Dan Warehouser, and I'm at 6298 Winchester Court in Gurnee, part of the Winchester Estates Homeowners Association, or neighborhood. I'm also the current president of the Homeowners Association, and perhaps a little bit of the window that I can give you from that is that for the last several years, I've been trying to serve with our board, and Christine is actually a member of the board of the Homeowners Association, so perhaps that was the confusion. But as we've tried to serve our neighborhood, I find this to be a group of folks who are kind, who are amicable, who mind their own business. It's really a wonderful neighborhood to be in. So when I see the level of response that's come, this is completely unique. I've lived since 1991 in our neighborhood. I've never seen anything like the response. And that tells you something about the sense of feeling, the deep feeling that this doesn't feel like it does no harm to us. And so that's perhaps a little bit of a spectacle to share. This isn't a group that's off suing people and is contentious with one another in virtually any other experience that I've ever seen. The one concern I'll add is that I'm grateful for, none of us like the idea of telling someone what they can do on their property. I mean, I certainly don't like that. But it does, if indeed it does feel to everyone else as if it's damaging, I'm grateful for the concessions that seem like at some level are in the plan. But the owners have demonstrated a willingness to come back again and again and again. And so while right now the hours are from 7 to 10, which again are outside of the boundaries of the hours of things around us, there's nothing, ultimately, there's no ordinance that would prevent them from coming back again and again and again to ultimately, especially since the science of customer service is part of what drives the ownership to move towards more customer service with longer hours, perhaps 24-hour service. And I realize they'd have to get approval. But several years from now, the board will have changed, and we don't want to keep coming back again and again and again to do this. And so I'm concerned that, in fact, 7 to 10 won't be the end of the hours. And that would really be grievous in my heart. So thank you for considering, and just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and board members. My name is Carol Shlevensky, and I've lived in Winchester Estates for 30 years. And I appreciate all of your decisions and your leadership in keeping Gurnee the community that we love. I feel that this exception, this change would be detrimental and is not a benefit to our community. I would hope you would consider all of the data and statistics that our neighbors have presented. They've done their homework. They're sincere, and they have excellent points. I am asking you to say no to an exception. Your zoning rules are there to keep all this community safe and the place we have loved for so many years. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Daniel Shlevensky, 6213 Brittany Court. And as my wife just spoke, we've lived there for 30 years. We're like the 6th house that was built in that subdivision. And we're really pleased with that neighborhood and want to, it to stay nice. But it's a good sign when small businesses move into a neighborhood. The best and most profitable businesses create jobs and keep the money in the local economy, as well as supporting charities, community organizations, and events. Of course, they provide needed products and services. I've identified several small businesses every neighborhood needs. Self-storage is not one of them. How about a pizza shop? It's hard to imagine a truly great neighborhood without a truly great pizza shop. A bookstore. Bookstores are a hub of activity and a safe place for inquisitive kids. They often hold events that generate critical mass, like book signings, author readings, book clubs, and contests for budding authors. How about an ice cream shop? Waffle cones, rocky roads, maraschino cherries, and whipped cream lends it a family-friendly feeling to your neighborhood. Here's others without details, because I don't want to spend too much time for you. How about pet grooming, a bakery, antique shop, a good plumbing shop, music shop, screen printing, and a bunch others. You get the idea. Please vote no for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Ann Smith. I live at 34710 Cemetery Road. My husband and I have lived there since 1995, and he's lived on Cemetery Road since 1974. I'm not going to reiterate what I was going to read because everybody did such a great job here, but this is just not the right location for this kind of development. This is a main corner of a main thoroughfare through Gurnee. I mean, you see, and I've never seen a self-storage facility on a main corner in a main corridor of a village. Never. So I please beg of you, just vote no, and let's put an end to this. We've all been through a lot of stressful times. Everybody here in Winchester Estates and on Cemetery Road. It just doesn't belong here. It just doesn't belong here. Please vote no.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I did write a letter that I'm sure you got via email, but I want to introduce myself. I'm Mary O. Young, the head of school at Country Meadows Montessori School. I am not a resident of Gurnee. I'm a resident of Antioch.
Could you state your name again, please?
I'm sorry, Mary O. Young.
Okay, and your address?
Country Meadows Montessori School,
Okay.
right at the, what are we?
Thank you.
Southwest corner of Washington and Cemetery. My predecessor had the school built with the landowner at the time in the 80s. It was a farm land at that point. As Gurnee grew, so did our school. Subdivisions were being built around it, and one of the largest area school districts was developed. School is important to families. If you ask any realtor, most families have done their due diligence about making their decision to build or buy based on the home, the area of the school district that they're buying in. This little community that we have has definitely grown, but it's maintained that neighborhood, family-oriented feel and look. Washington and Cemetery roads are considered small-town community streets where children play outside, neighbors walk their dogs and kids, and children attend private school. Our little community has music lessons with many children from the surrounding area attending school after hours. Family visit the orthodontist, they go to the bank, drop off their dry cleaning, get their nails and hair done. We feel safe, as anybody can feel safe these days. Our current challenge with COVID has given us a learned sense of fear and anxiety. Working at a school, I experience this every day. Making big changes with the landscape around us, where we look out our windows, we see people strolling along the sidewalk on Cemetery with their dogs and children. This will be disrupted and restricted with this proposed storage unit. Looking out for cars entering and leaving, irritating lights on disturbing the outdoor peace, unwanted and unappealing noises generated from metal buildings, doors, does not come across as very compatible or palatable for the families in our family-friendly community, and it will generate more irritation and anxiety. My main concern, of course, as it has been for the 21 years that I've been the principal at Country Meadows, is to keep our children safe. Whether it's a pandemic, repairs on our playground, strangers lurking in the parking lot, or Mother Nature, this storage unit facility makes me even more concerned for the children at our school and the types of potentially unsafe activities or situations that await us if it is built. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Micah Smith. I have lived on Cemetery Road for my whole life, which is 18 years. And I feel like if you ask everyone in this room, even if you're pro the storage unit or not, I feel like you would say no to not live right next to a storage unit. And I feel like it's like going to be unsafe for everyone around there, and everyone that already has spoken have said like great points about having it not, because you won't really see any like things that'll benefit the community, and you already know that there's so many more storage units around Gurnee that'll help their businesses, and it'll take away from theirs if you build another one. So, thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Robert Scheck, manager at Marsh Funeral Home, business owner. Just give you my thoughts. The first thing is, nobody probably would like to have a funeral home in their backyard either, right? So, but we have to understand the funeral home business is a community development. We're here for the community. But your petitioner, the reason I'm speaking is because your petitioner never even reached out to me as a business owner. The homeowners did, but I felt that it was kind of bizarre that I didn't receive a call about trying to develop this property until I signed a petition, not maybe favor or against, but a petition to voice. But your petitioner called me, was drilling me, trying to find out what I was going to do, what I was going to say, if I was going to say anything. So I felt that it was my obligation as a community to take care of everybody, no matter what faith you are. I've been in the funeral business for 32 years, and I've seen Gurnee many years before I came up here and managing this home. The Gurnee development has changed dramatically for the better. But if you actually put this parcel on this lot, you're going to change the look of your Gurnee. You're going to make it look not presentable. We probably will go on our ways and do whatever we do in life. The next thing that you're going to discuss is who you're going to allow what businesses to go in there besides your storage unit. And I just feel that you need to really look at it, your petitioner, what they're doing. It seems like they're trying to ram this down your throat and not really care about the community as our funeral home cares about the community. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. So what happens next is there's an opportunity for rebuttal, but also if there's somebody else that would like to just testify, usually it's not the petitioner, but you could say something during rebuttal if you'd like. But before that happens, let me just make sure that, does anybody else want to say something, especially something that hasn't been said yet, right? All right, so then the petitioner is given an opportunity to rebut or make any comments that they'd like to make, whether it's in addition or just in response to what you've heard. And that could be Ms. Sachs or Mr. Callahan.
I just want to respond to something that I felt was very inappropriate, to bring up the fact that I'm a Florida resident, and you could look at my social media. I was in Florida to take care of my mother who passed away, and I was granted a Florida residency license plate while my mother was, my renewal was coming up. I bought a home based on inheritance from my mother, and we have a home that we go there temporarily. To use that against us is just grabbing at something that's inappropriate. I live in Gurnee. My kids are running our business. I'm training them, It's every parent's dream to have your family continue what you started. I started in my basement in Waukegan. I've developed a very successful business. I continue to envision that. I'm putting in a 10,000 square foot retail center, which I already have a 6,000 square foot retail center in unincorporated Gurnee. I'm just really upset, I'm sorry, to bring up something that was because of caring for my mother who was battling ovarian cancer, who's lost her life, and throwing that as something negative is not fair. But I wanted to explain it to everybody what we did, and when you make a comment that you want to be in Florida, I'm sorry, in this weather, people want to go to Florida. But as far as there would be retail up front, you will have the opportunity to have the bookstores, or have an art gallery, or have painting classes, and have an ice cream shop, or a pizza parlor. There's 10,000 square foot of retail that would be there, besides my own business that will be moving there. And then we also envisioned having some type of farmer's market, that we'd have the property in front of it, be able to bring it from Washington and 21, so I can continue that farm stand feel and that look there. Because I think it's just the front of the street, it's retail, it's next to residential, I understand that, but you're also next to a cemetery, which also lowers your home value. That's already been established. And also with the fact that the back of the property is not seen, and it's going to be bordered, and it's also going to have a lot of curb appeal. So I just wanted to speak up. I wasn't planning on speaking up, but I just wanted for the record why I have a Florida residency.
Thank you, Ms. Six. Mr. Callahan?
Just a couple of comments. A lot of discussion about this should be C3. Could have applied for C3, but were advised that C2 was the way to do it through a PUD. So, and you have that power. I mean, there is, in your PUD provisions, it says you can have uses approved that would not otherwise be approved. So that's the vehicle. Obviously, you have to decide whether this use is appropriate for this property, but I don't think the approach that's taken with regard to the zone that was applied for should be the thing that sways you one way or the other. It's up to you to decide, if it's an appropriate use. The other thing is a lot of comments about criminal activity. Look at the statistics of your own police department. I think they're telling. They're really not one violent crime. And the police calls were, what was lumped into the police call data was officer-initiated activity. They're on patrols. I think that's a good thing. That's not somebody calling them. That's police officers on patrols. There certainly were other calls that were for, things like an abandoned auto, motor vehicle accident, civil assist, not criminal, found article, alarm call, those types of things. What I was talking about when I made my presentation was the reportable crimes, and that was 90, and as I said, over 40% of them were 2 incidents in 2015. With that, I don't want to take up any more time, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan.
I just wanted to address, there was some talk about the residential homes seeing garage doors. There are no garage doors on those rear masonry walls facing the homes. It is masonry wall, 40 feet away and screening, 40 feet away from the property line. So just to make sure that's clear. There was some note about the stormwater and pumping in a different direction. We have a civil engineer here. It was brought up at the Planning and Zoning Commission. We cannot take water from one flood basin or floodway area and put it to a different area. And that's what you would be doing, so that would not be allowed. And I believe staff did agree with that. And as far as taking the use that is not in C2, the comprehensive plan, which was it was done in 2020 on your comprehensive plan, has the property as C2. And in that C2, I just want to make sure that the residents know this, is that you can have alcohol sales, daycare center, hotel, motel, restaurants, restaurants with alcohol, auto dealership, gas station, all as part of the C2 on your comprehensive plan. So the reason why we went with the C2 instead of C3, we did the C2, it's a much lower traffic and incidents, and traffic is the biggest, is the self-storage. And part of the C2, we went through that list and took out other uses, such as the restaurants and I think banquet facilities. There's a list, I don't have that right in front of me, that we removed things that could possibly be more traffic. And we've totally eliminated access off of Washington. So we believe we've really cut down any disturbance to the neighbors from what could be there as a C2, other than leaving it blank forever. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, is it, sir, you're not able to
Can you
respond?
speak again?
No, you cannot.
Okay.
No. Okay. So at this point, what happens is the floor is closed to comment, and at this point, the next step is that there'll be a discussion among the board members, or if that's what they would like to do. The first step, however, is, as I said in the very beginning, is that I'll look for a motion, and again, it'll come in the form of a positive motion and a second, and then the board will have discussion after that. So the first step is to seek, is there a motion, and do we need the full language on?
Yeah, it would be a motion to recommend approval of the annexation agreement. The move-in and the seconder isn't committing themselves to a particular vote. This is a procedural first step. We have to have a motion so there can be discussion. And so that would be the appropriate motion. A motion to recommend, you're recommending, as I mentioned before, essentially to yourself, because you're going to take up as an agenda item after the conclusion of this public hearing portion, a similar vote where it'll be in the affirmative, but you can vote as you see fit based on your deliberations. So right now, we need a person to make a motion to recommend approval of the annexation agreement.
Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion by trustee Thorstensen, second by trustee O'Brien.
Now can be discussed.
Correct. So maybe what's most appropriate is if, well, who would like to, does anybody want to make a comment?
And if there's any questions, too, of staff, we can certainly answer any questions.
Trustee Balmas?
Just during the, going through the material, there was mention of doing landscaping or more intense landscaping along the western edge, that they just hadn't done that yet. Is that something that's still pending?
The final PUD approval will require the final landscape plan, which will be based upon a tree survey of that existing wooded area. So right now, they have not taken that step to evaluate the type and the species, the size, and the quality of trees that are in there. That would be undertaken before the final PUD approval.
And can more landscape be required at that time beyond a tree survey? So if we wanted more of the evergreen type of material planted along there to break up the wall, as so to speak?
They've committed to implement the full buffer plantings as part of the requirement under the zoning ordinance. They, upon the tree survey, if they are finding that there is a lot of good material that is still there, that they may come back and request some relief from some of those buffer plantings where it doesn't make sense to plant good trees under bigger trees. So that would be a detail that would be hashed out at the final PUD process.
Okay. And another question that I have is, I know there's the gated access to the storage unit, but is there a wall that is on the north end? Is that going to be a solid wall, or is that also?
Site plan. So, let's see, my cursor goes. So you have the solid back of the building, which would create basically a wall.
Right.
You have fencing here and fencing along here encapsulating the paved area.
And that is open fencing, or is it a solid wall type of fencing?
I believe it's a solid fence, an opaque fence.
Okay, and the height on that is,
I believe it was 8 feet, 6 feet. I think it's 8 feet is required.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bowles. Anybody else that would like to, on this side, either Trustee Woodside or Trustee Garner, any comments or thoughts? No?
I would just simply like to say that as we consider this decision, that we keep in mind that it is very important with the few parcels of land that are left in Gurnee that we, as we consider which way we're going to go, we need to be mindful that these are the remaining jewels to the crown of Gurnee. We live in a wonderful community, and I've sat here 14 years, and I've sat through many of these decisions. And, you know, one of the things we want to consider is what we want to look at for the next, for the remaining time that we're here. And it is decisions like these that make the case. So consider, you know, the jewel that we place forward as a board.
Thank you, Trustee Garner. Go to this side. No, Trustee O'Brien, no. Trustee Thorstensen.
I'd probably just add, I think it was addressed, but my concern would always go to some of the unanticipated risks, such as storage of chemicals, that we wouldn't be able to police that, and in terms of our proactive requirements. And seems like there was something else affiliated with that, but that would be that unforeseen risk.
Thank you, Trustee Thorstensen. Trustee Ross.
Mine are more comments. We usually do what the Plan Commission recommends because they spend a lot of time coming to their decision. And I think that all the residents should really recognize too that we don't have as much power as you think we do, that the property owner has power to do what they want to do on their own property within the guidelines that are set. And so sometimes, even if it's not something we particularly would want, if they have the right zoning or we get to that point. And then you always have the opportunity to buy the property too, and then you can do whatever you'd like on the property. So I remember my dad telling me that one time when I thought it was inappropriate for a neighbor to have a pool in their yard. And he said, well, if you don't own the property, you don't have anything to say about it. So, and then for the petitioner, I know you feel like you've come back several times, but knowing how much the residents didn't want this, and that maybe you could have come back with, you know, talked to them and come back with another change that would have been more to their liking, maybe smaller self-storage, larger retail. I don't know what that would have been, but I just feel that there's been a lot of tension on both sides, and wish there could have been more respect, and I appreciated the reference to COVID has changed all of us. So those are just my comments.
Okay. So is anybody else? No? So at this point, we'll take our vote. And I just would say that I just appreciate the civility and the way in which both sides have handled themselves. It's been a pleasure. We don't always experience that here on the village board, and I'd say that just for neighbors to come together, we're sorry that there's adversity here in this regard, but nonetheless, it's been a good presentation tonight from both sides. So thank you for that. So at this point, we'll do...
Just a point of order again. The motion is to recommend approval of the annexation agreement. If you're in agreement with that, you would vote yes. If you disagree with that, you would vote no.
All right. So roll call, please, Andy.
O'Brien.
You know what, actually, before we, sorry about that. So this is a time, one of the few times where actually I would get to vote, and unfortunately, I represent Mr. Rydell, who owns the property, so I'll be not voting. It'll be just the trustees that'll vote. I'll actually abstain, even though the clerk will call my name, I'll abstain from voting. It's the trustees will vote. And as you've seen in the material, it requires 5 affirmative votes in order for this particular motion to be successful. So, sorry. So roll call vote, please.
O'Brien.
No.
Thomas.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
No.
Woodside.
No.
Ross.
No.
Garner.
No.
Hood.
Abstain.
So that's 1 aye.
So the motion doesn't carry, and this is a recommendation, so what'll happen immediately following now, just because of the way it works, we'll actually recess, which will be about 5 seconds long, and we're going to continue on to the village board meeting, which has as new business, item number 1, which indicates approval of ordinance 2021-78, authorizing the approval and execution of an annexation agreement for property located at 16530 Washington Street and 34644 Cemetery Road. So again, I'll just defer to Mr. Winter.
And again, because the village has received this request, the motion or the ordinance is written in the affirmative. So we need to have a motion and a second. Again, you're not bound by making that motion. And then if you're in favor of approving the annexation agreement, you would vote yes. If you are opposed to approving the annexation agreement, you would vote no through a roll call vote. But we need to start out with a motion and a second.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion by trustee Garner, second by trustee Thorstenson. Any discussion? None. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
No.
Thomas.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
No.
Woodside.
No.
Ross.
No.
Garner.
No.
Hood.
Abstain. So the motion does not pass. And just move on to item number 2, approval of ordinance 2021-79, authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement among member agencies of the Crisis Outreach and Support Team. Pat.
Yeah, so Chief Smith's going to walk us through this. This is something that the Lake County Sheriff has been working on for some time with multiple police agencies in Lake County. They're to a point where they have developed an intergovernmental agreement for those that are interested to provide this service amongst the county. So Chief Smith has been instrumental in those conversations. The Village of Gurnee Police Department is looking to participate, so Chief Smith is going to cover what the program is, the benefits to the village, and what our participation would be.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mutes, and Village Board. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you today and share some news about mental health response teams in Lake County and the Gurnee Police Department's participation up to this point and our request to move forward with the assignment of 2 officers on a 30-day basis, separate 30-day basis to this team. As mentioned, the Lake County Sheriff's Office has been moving forward over the last year and a half or so with a team that they call COAST. The COAST, just so everybody is aware of it, stands for the, I missed it, Crisis, I'm sorry. COAST stands for the Crisis Outreach and Support Team. It's an acronym that they put into place, which is a co-responder model of policing that pairs police officers with social workers as they respond to calls of citizens that are in mental health crisis. This particular program that we've been working on for about the last 10 months is a pilot program that pairs the Gurnee Police Department with 5 other local police jurisdictions throughout Lake County under the umbrella of the Lake County Sheriff's Office. And these teams, as they would begin, would start out in a reactive nature, and that they would follow up with reports that were forwarded to them by the participating police departments the next day. And what that would do for Gurnee and the communities that are participating is it would give us an avenue towards advanced services that we don't currently have. Our officers do a great job. Most of our officers have been trained in crisis intervention, which is a minimum 40-hour training course. These officers would receive an additional 40 hours advanced crisis intervention, and they would be paired with a social worker to follow up on these cases. As I mentioned, initially they would be follow-up, but there is a goal in mind to have them respond to active calls. During the pilot program, they would only be following up and responding to the calls that are in the jurisdictions that are part of this pilot program, which Gurnee is requesting to be a part of. Again, it puts a social worker in contact with somebody to assist that person to get all of the services that they may need. The police officer will be there to assist, but is a security element. They are not the primary problem solver in this instance. They are there to assist the social worker and allow the social worker, the therapist, to treat this like a medical call and have that avenue of approach and follow-up that we just can't provide without this service. As it stands now, the program would roll out on July 31st, and a community would begin that first 30-day assignment. And so the initial plans are for a Lake County Sheriff's deputy to pair with a social worker, and then an officer that has been selected by home agencies and assigned to the unit to be paired with a second social worker, so that there are always 2 teams active for a month. The assignments would be 30 days, or somewhere around 30 days. And during those 30 days, they would work out of Lake County. They'd be sworn in as a Lake County Sheriff's deputy. They would be issued equipment, and they would report to the Lake County Sheriff's Department, including using their reporting system for mental health that they already have in place. Upon the completion of the first 30-day assignment, the next jurisdiction would take over. And this would continue over the course of the first year, which allows all 6 agencies to cover basically 2 30-day windows throughout the program. So again, we're here today with an intergovernmental agreement that would allow us to participate with this team to bring much needed and advanced services to our community. And I am available for any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Chief?
I don't really have a question, but I commend the department for doing something like this. It's been really needed, and I really appreciate your efforts in working on this.
Thank you.
I concur. It's a giant step in the right direction.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't really have a question either, other than to say that this is a great use of resources. It's addressing an incredibly important need, particularly right now, and it's leveraging partnerships around the county that just is a forward-thinking use of our resources. So thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Yes, Trustee Russ?
I agree, and, but I was just wondering, if maybe you've said it already, but we pay for the officer and all of that. Is there any other additional money that's needed at this time?
So we would provide the salary for the officer that's assigned to the position, as well as clothing. They will have a dress-down, softer uniform that would include, some sort of a polo. Lake County will be providing a squad car that would be used by the officer and the clinician during their response to calls or their follow-up. And so at this time, we would not be requesting any additional funds for the program. I think it's important to note that the program is being funded by a grant through Lake County. And we do have a larger vision for these co-responder units that is much bigger in the years to come. And at that point, there may be a funding request from any communities that want to participate.
Trustee Thorstensen?
I'm going to jump on the positive bandwagon. When I read this in the board package, it made me think of some family and friends, or extended family and friends that had situations that I'm sure that if this service was available, they hopefully would have been with us still. And so I think, like that has been said, it'll be a fantastic step forward for Lake County.
Thank you.
Thanks. Trustee O'Brien, you good?
Thank you for the report, Chief. I too am thrilled that Gurnee is in the forefront of this program. I did have just one question, because one question was, and you already answered it, basically we're providing security to someone else, even though we're going to have additional training, the officers will have different training, like 40 or 60 hours extra, if I read correctly. That's good. Only question is, at first, I don't know what kind of needs there are in Lake County, but what if they're not busy that whole time? Will they come back and work in Gurnee during that 30 days, or for 30 days, are they off of your staff choice?
So for the 30-day assignment, they would be assigned to Lake County. It is a full 30-day assignment. We're looking at varying hours, but generally Monday through Friday to follow up on these calls. Unfortunately, I wish I could say to you that there's going to be downtime. That will not be the case. I think, unfortunately, as we've experienced over the last several years, the uptick in mental health needs and mental health-related calls in Gurnee, as well as Lake County, have increased dramatically. I think the more likely response is that there's going to be a greater need for these teams, as opposed to two. We'll need additional units after we complete this pilot program. So directly to answer your question, they will not be reporting back to Gurnee on a daily basis. They will have a supervisor in Lake County that oversees the task force. I will be a seated board member on the pilot program. We'll have regular contact and updates, as well as monthly conversations and quarterly meetings. So we'll be heavily involved in the progress of the program and make necessary adjustments as they come across. But they would be assigned to Lake County for their entire 30-day period.
Thank you so much. Can I make a motion?
Yes, you can.
Okay, I just did.
Second. Trustee O'Brien making the motion, and Trustee Thorstensen.
I was too active tonight. Let somebody else.
Second.
Trustee Woodside, second. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Woodside.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I'd just like to add that we are the first community that has brought this forward to our board. And so we will be releasing a joint press release on Wednesday for the communities that will be participating, but thank you for your support.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. So the final item is the public comment. So if anybody from the audience would like to make a public comment, you can step up to the microphone, state your name and your address. No address, sorry. I did see that. Carissa, you'd like to make a comment?
Hi, I'm Carissa Casbin. I'm Lake County Board Member for District 7, which includes this fine area here. I'm just here tonight to say hello to everyone and to let you know that if you ever need me, I think you all know how to find me at this point. But I also wanted to applaud your leadership on this COAST program. I so appreciate the Village of Gurnee's willingness to step forward and help the county all the time. So I'm really grateful for the leadership of the people in this room. Thank you.
And we appreciate our relationship with you too and the board, so thanks. Anybody else? No? So public comments closed. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Baumus, second by trustee Garner. All in favor, say aye. Aye.